Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Jaya Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Jaya Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Today we'll be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11. Is it marked? For our harmonious kartal players, Madanga. Today is 11/3/31. I chose this verse today because not only is it a famous verse, but it's also, I think, an introduction to the Sadhu Sanga and a good way to have a discussion, a starting point to have a discussion about why we're here. so we can get the most out of our time here together. And I'll say this Sanskrit line by line, and if you like, you can please repeat. Smarantas smarayantascha mito gauga harang harim bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya bibrat utpulakam tanum. Do you have an extra mic that's being circulated? Okay, go ahead. Start chanting. We'll bring you the mic. Somebody? Smaranta smarayantascha mito kauga haram harim bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya bibrat utpulakam. One more. Smaranta smarayantascha mito kauga haram harim bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya bibrat utpulakam. Because this is a short class, you can memorize this later on your own time. Okay? Say yes. Okay. These are the word for word. Smaranta, remembering. Smarayanta, cha, and reminding. Mitaha, one another. Aga oga haram, who takes away everything inauspicious from the devotee. I always thought it would be a nice name for a devotee. Aga oga haram. Somebody might like it. Dasi. Harim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhaktya, by devotion. Sanjataya, awakened. Bhaktya, by devotion. Bibrati, possess. Utpulakam, agitated by ecstasy. Tanum, body. Here's the translation. The devotees of the Lord constantly discuss the glories of the personality of Godhead among themselves. Thus they constantly remember the Lord and remind one another of his qualities and pastimes. In this way, by their devotion to the principles of Bhakti Yoga, the devotees please the personality of Godhead, who takes away from them everything inauspicious. Being purified of all impediments, the devotees awaken to pure love of Godhead, and thus, even within this world, their spiritualized bodies exhibit symptoms of transcendental ecstasy, such as standing of the bodily hairs on end. This is the purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The word aghauga, haram, is very significant in this verse. Aga refers to that which is inauspicious or sinful. The living entity is actually Sach Chit Ananda Vigraha, or eternal and full of bliss and knowledge. But by neglecting his eternal relationship with Krishna, the personality of Godhead, he commits sinful activities and undergoes the inauspicious result in the form of material suffering. The chain of sinful reactions is called ogha, or a relentless wave of suffering. Krishna is aghauga haram harim. He takes away the sinful reactions of his devotees. who are thus entitled to experience the inconceivable bliss of the kingdom of God, even while remaining in this world. The words bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya indicate that there are two divisions of bhakti yoga, sadhana bhakti and raganuga bhakti. Srila Prabhupada has elaborately explained in his book, The Nectar of Devotion, the progress of the devotee from sadhana bhakti, or the execution of regulative principles, to raganuga bhakti, or service executed in love of Godhead. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a liberated soul is always enthusiastic due to the appearance of transcendental ecstasy within his body. Thus, he always aspires to remain overwhelmed in chanting the glories of the personality of Godhead, Hari. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande Haribo. I offer my respectful obeisances to my exalted God brothers and God sisters who are present today and all the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. There are two things that are impossibilities in the material world and in material consciousness, which are one and the same. And those two are, one, being happy, and two, cooperating. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Havi Yogendra gives the essence of material consciousness. Bhayam dvitiya abhinibeshu tasyat ishad apetasya viparya yo smriti. There's a sense of separateness, dvitiya, and therefore there's, without a connection to Krishna, a sense of fear. Fear that we may lose our share. And the Sri Upanishad solves that problem, by, like a parent who comes in the room and says, let me sort this out for you, when kids are fighting over something. It says, Isavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunchita magrada kasya swidanam. That'd be a good parent too who brought that verse to the room. And that is that everything animate or inanimate within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for oneself, which are set aside as one's quota. And one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. We are individual souls, but we're also part and parcel of Krishna. And there's a balance that we have to do in this world in order to be successful. There's a way that we have to cooperate. In corporate management, there's a description of cooperation by using an X and Y axis. And the vertical axis describes the overarching purpose of the organization. Every organization has an ultimate purpose, otherwise, what is it? And the horizontal axis describes how there are many individual projects that exist within the overall organization. Rupanuga Prabhu, who's the founder of the GBC College, taught me this when he picked us up at the airport one day. A little light conversation on the way home. He said that the trick is to keep the two in balance. And those along the horizontal axis who begin to think that they're separate or they're the all in all, then fall out of resonance with the overall organization. And that has to be adjusted. In fact, the whole trick of management in any organization is to make sure we remember both things. There has to be individual initiative. That comes naturally, doesn't it? You don't have to spur on competition. It happens quite naturally because living beings have a sense, because we're small parts of Krishna, who's the supreme controller, so we have a little sense of controlling whatever we can get our hands on, don't we? Say yes. And when we're able to keep the overall purpose in mind, the entire organization, and at the same time exhibit our individual talents and skills, then there's a harmony which is noticeable. The Hare Krishna movement is a community. We need community. When we have community, which means to have a common interest, it's the very essence of the word, and especially when we have a festival, the festival of the year called Sadhu Sanga, thanks to His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj, who's enlightened in these matters because he knows the technique of spreading the Sankirtan movement, which is to create an environment where devotees will come in and naturally feel encouraged by one another. He knows that by creating such an environment, one doesn't have to perform severe austerities to come to a sense of cooperation and happiness. It happens automatically by dint of coming into community, which means one doesn't have to worry so much about what you're going to eat for lunch or breakfast, right? You already know you're going to be fed. And we have a sense of being here for a common cause. And when we come together in community, as it's described in the Bhagavatam, and it's for Ishtagosti, which means we're here to not socialize, but to hear and chant about Krishna. Satam prasangam amavirya sambido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata tajjoshana dashu apavargavartmini shada ratir bhaktir anukrimishati. There's a natural progression in Krishna consciousness when we have devotional community in which we come together for Sangha. We get association with those who are engaged in speaking to us about Krishna consciousness. And therefore today's verse says, Smarantas smarayantas cha, mita gauga haram harim. That by this process, what is the process? Smaranta, remembering Krishna and causing other people to remember Krishna. Then mito gauga haram harim. Remember the word auga, like aga. Aga, what does that remind you of? Yeah. Aga asura, the aga oga das, aga oga. The aga oga, haram harim, Krishna's inclined to take away the unwanted things within our heart, as Prabhupada puts it, the unnecessary necessities. It happens by community. It happens by spiritual sangha. Satam prasangam mamavirya sambido. Within the association of devotees in a spiritual community, and it may be a large one like this, powerful acharya-like, or acharyas know how to make such community. Prabhupada made a society. He didn't rent a cave somewhere that you can have your own individual cave somewhere in the Himalayas. But he made areas for community where we would come together. And the Sadhu Sanga has become a great inspiration. It's like a spiritual stimulus package when the government pours some kind of, passes some laws in order to stimulate the economy. In fact, Shyamasundar Prabhu the other day, 1967, Shyamasundar started the San Francisco Temple along with Malati. He was telling us about the gold rush because he's a miner. And he said it changed the whole world. Just by the influx of wealth that came from the gold rush. People came from all over the world. It stimulated the economy. It became a different world. Wealth increased in the world by 10 times because of the gold rush. And at Sadhu Sanga, we also have the same kind of stimuli. That we come together here, and we hear and chant together, Satam prasangam mamavirya sambido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana kata, or smaranta smarayantascha. We remember Krishna, and we cause other people to remember Krishna, or as the commentators use in this purport, to remind other people of Krishna, remind, bring it back into their mind. And by that, then each individual that goes out then becomes a source of inspiration. They're inspired, and they inspire others. And that was Lord Chaitanya's idea also. The metaphor that Kaviraj Goswami used to describe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's campaign in one place is a flood. And we start such a flood within our own hearts. How do we do that? By coming together and talking about Krishna. Smaranta smarayantas cha. We remember Krishna, we cause others to remember Krishna. Mito gauga haram harim. And in the process, even without noticing it, Krishna is removing the unwanted things within our hearts. we're free to give Krishna consciousness. It's not that Krishna consciousness is a difficult thing. It's quite natural when you're happy and you feel affection for others because of seeing that they're part of Krishna. Then you naturally want everybody to join in. Joy wants to share itself with others. If you win something, what do? First, call a friend, right? I just won something. And you say, hey, I just won this. I want to share it. You don't go sit in your room and say, I'm not telling anybody. It'd be no good. So when we experience this flood within our own heart, because the seed of desire for material enjoyment somehow or other is there within the heart since a time immemorial, and stopgap measures, says the Bhagavatam, won't work. Pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhakta karmashrayam gratitam udgartayanti santa tadvadna rikta matayo yatayopi rudha shroto ganast tamaranam bhajavasudevam. That because one becomes preoccupied with the flood of bhakti, the vilas, there's a kind of enjoyment we get that's on the spiritual platform where we realize that we're better off together in Sangha. I mean, just from a basic level, we're better facilitated living together. That's why people group together in towns and villages and cities. But in a spiritual Sangha, there's a way in which we're constantly reminded of Krishna. And because of that, we then are freed from the encumbrances that are there within our own heart. And we begin to feel happiness. And so the Bhagavatam describes how that happens. It's because Krishna is in our heart. Vrishujati hridayam niyasya sakshad dariravaša abhihito pyagoganash rasanaya pranaya ritungrapadma sabhabati bhagavata pradhana ukta. This is a description by one of the Yogendras saying what it's like to be on the topmost platform of devotional service. But he also describes in this verse the power of spiritual association. And that is that smaranta smarayantascha. When you're in spiritual association, you're going to hear about Krishna. That's what spiritual association means. It doesn't mean ping pong, table tennis, cricket, and so forth. Although, no offense to any cricketers in the world or ping pong players, but real association means to remind each other of Krishna. And when that happens, then Krishna, Vrishujati hridayamna yasya sakshat, he's directly there within the heart. And then darir avasha abhihito pyagoganata, Krishna's tendency is, because he's so kind, that if somebody accidentally says Hare Krishna, see if you can accidentally do that. The verse says his tendency is to say, oh, very nice, and then remove the aga-oga for within their hearts. That verse says the same thing. Darir avasha pyagao. It uses the word oga also, that Krishna is there within the heart, and he has a tendency to remove the burden that's within our heart. It's holding us back. And it goes on to say, if somebody becomes enthusiastic to chant the holy name, it means it becomes their preoccupation to chant Hare Krishna. Then pranaya, rasanaya, means they're able to tie Krishna's lotus feet as if with a rope. That's the metaphor. Pranaya rasanaya means they tie Krishna's lotus feet. He can't get away. It's the same indication in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, second verse says, Sadyo hridya varudite trakriti bishushu shubhishtakshana. And Prabhupada says, by hearing Bhagavatam in the association of devotees, Krishna becomes packed up within your heart. And the indication is, although Krishna could do anything, but he's subservient to his devotees, the ajita becomes jitta. Gyane prayasamura pasyana manta eva jivanti san mukharitam bhavati avartam stane stita shrutigatam tanavan manobir ye prayaso jitta jito pyasitaistri lokam. Same mood, this verse I'm quoting now. Brahma says, wherever you are now, that's okay. Does that make you feel better? It's good, you can only be yourself, right? Wherever you are now, take spiritual association and smaranta smarayantascha. And he says, stane stita shrutikatam tanavan manopir. Just use your body, mind, words to remember Krishna, to talk about Krishna. And then what happens? Well, there's a step-by-step way in which we become purified. And he says, Jita jito pyasitrais trilokyam. And that means that ajita, Krishna is ajita. Right? Say yes. Yeah, he's unconquerable. Nobody can conquer him. We can go through the Bhagavatam. If he ever lost, it was maybe he was playing the part of a human being when he ran away from Jarasandha, right? Say yes. And when Shalva tried to fake him out for a minute there, he pretended like he was faked out, just to give everyone a thrill, and himself too. But he's never faked out. He never loses a fight. But sometimes he likes to pretend like he's about to. Lord Nrsingadev let go of Hiranyakashipu for a minute, and everyone said, oh no. Then he caught him again and tore him to shreds. And so Krishna is ajita, but for the devotee who hears and chants in the association of devotees, he becomes jitta. He's conquered. That's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. And that's the beauty of spiritual community. Ishtagosti means, and it doesn't mean anybody can start a spiritual community. How many people does it take for community? This will be on the SAT. At least the one I hope to take someday. Nice and easy questions. Okay, how many people does it take to form a community? 2? Do we need to vote on that? 2 people. And if 2 people come together, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Machita makata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantaschamam nitya tushanti cha ramanti cha. Then they get satisfaction and bliss. And one of my most dear godbrothers, once when I was complaining, which I do almost nonstop in my life, about the rigors of management, he gave me the best advice I've ever gotten, which was, you have to be blissful. If you're blissful, you can overcome all of the so-called problems of the world. And nobody can do that. That's how I started the class. It's impossible to be happy in this world. Prahlad Maharaj says, Kutra shisha shuti sukham mrigatrishni rupa. He said, this happiness in the material world, it's only when you discuss it, there's an idea that there's going to be happiness, but you never quite get it. If you go to somebody's house for dinner, and then you hear them working in the kitchen, but they never bring it out. Or recently, 3 times, Amazon delivered to the wrong house, and we couldn't get our package. 3 times. And I was thinking, this is the material world. We're sitting here thinking Amazon Prime's going to solve my problem. And 3 times in a row, they delivered to the wrong house. They even sent a picture. And we're like, can't get it. Kutrashri shashuti sukham mrigatrishni rupa. But in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes, if you sit down with your friend and you read the Bhagavad Gita together, the mind says, don't do it. You're too busy. Read your emails. People hate you. But then you read Bhagavad Gita and said, nobody hates me. And if they do, so what? And you feel naturally happy. And the whole Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. There has to be a flood within the heart. Now that flood goes out, according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to the world. When we're happy, we can spread happiness. And there's only one way to be happy. There's no other way to be happy except by spiritual association, by Ishta Goshti, to come together and hear Bhagavatam together and chant Hare Krishna together. It's the only way. Do you agree? Yes. And when we have that sense of joy in our heart, I mean, it may not be joy in the sense that our hairs are standing on end. Because that's what the verse today says, Bibrat yupulakash tanum, that in your tanum, in your body, your hairs are going to stand on. That will happen. But we achieve something that nobody else can achieve in the world, and we feel okay. Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj gave a class in Mayapur the other day. I walked away with such an important lesson. Sometimes the most important lessons are so simple and they are so relatable. He talked about the difference between having a good morning program, chanting good rounds, going to the morning program, and having an interrupted program. Or it could happen, you skip it altogether, right? He said, are you ready? Wait for it. He said, I feel better. That's what he said. And I thought, nobody can feel better in this world. You just go from one anxiety to the next. There's no end to it. That's the flood of the material world. It never stops, ever. There's one time when it does stop. It's when you have spiritual association. Smaranta smarayantascha. Mita Gauga Haram Harim. And then Krishna does it. Just by us associating, by hearing and chanting, reminding each other of Krishna, then we feel naturally happy. Then, when we go out in the world, everybody else says, where'd you get it? Where did you... They look at the countenance of a devotee and they say, where'd you get that? And that's why they want to join the Hare Krishna movement. And if they come into a community where there's love, where the devotees love each other so much that they do the second thing that nobody can do in this world, which is cooperate. When they see that, they say, okay, this is the real thing. And it can only be done when one rises above the limitations, icha dvesha samutena, the hatred in one's heart because somebody else is taking up my oxygen. I wanted to say that. Why did they say that? I should have said that. And we find when devotees are happy and they go out into the world, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, they were happy. They had Sadhu Sanga every night in the Sri Vasangam, right? And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu opened the doors and said, okay, go out and walk amongst the rest of the people and just share your happiness. That's Krishna consciousness movement. And yesterday, one of our devotees, Krishna Saka Prabhu, when he got here to the hotel, see, he and his wife, Kamalakshi, they're grihastas, but they're on traveling Sankirtan. So they have no worries in life. There's no furniture in their house because they live in a van mostly. And they go out from state to state. Where do they go? Montana. Try going to Montana for a while. Utah, etc. And they just share Krishna consciousness. So they're so used to sharing the flood with other people. When Krishna Saka Prabhu got here yesterday, he saw there was a huge line and he got up to the front and they said, And you can't check in or it'll cost you $75. And he said to the receptionist, "You look spiritual." And he goes, "I do?" He said, "Yeah." Because that's how he sees everybody. That's what happens when you feel naturally inspired by association of devotees. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yashuvairagyam. You naturally have these qualities of feeling happy because you don't care what happens in the material world. You only care if you can do your quota of rounds and hear the Bhagavatam and share it with other people. So people feel that. And the receptionist felt it. He was the only one who got in. Don't get envious. They let him in. She said, "You go." That's the key to the material world. You see people who have given up desire for enjoying the material world. Everybody loves them. It's about the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. It's said by Srinivasacharya that everybody loved them because all they cared about was sharing their happiness with other people. That's the Krishna consciousness movement, and it starts right here in the Sadhu Sanga. I'm so grateful to His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj for creating these sanghas all over the world. Such a generous thing to do. It's the most generous thing that you could possibly do, is create a space for other people so they can experience the happiness of spiritual association and go share it with others. Once when we were in Denver, and we were happy because we were there with the amazing residents of the temple, and we all went out on book distribution one evening. And we were going to these apartments in a lower middle class area, which is really nice because you knock on the door, people say, "Come on in." And we were going around, and it was a 2-level apartment, and there was this man looking down, and he was watching us going in and out of these apartments. And we were enjoying. We were just happy, and we were enjoying going in people's houses, saying Hare Krishna. And so this man's leaning down over the balcony, and he starts pointing to doors, and he goes, "Go to that one. Try this one. I know this guy. Get him." And then he came down, and he took us on the street around get that one. This one here. That's the flood that happens. That's the Hare Krishna flood. And it happens when our heart is flooded, when we feel relieved. The burden of our own material desires, the sense of envy. I have to be the center. We can lose that in community. We could check our false ego at the door here, sorry for the cliche, but when we come in, we can be part of the whole and just be in service. And if we have that, we have everything. If we have that, then we have the power of the Hare Krishna movement. All administration, although absolutely necessary, cannot create that. You can't do it with the flow chart. It only happens by Sadhu Sanga. That's why this is so important to come together, speak about Krishna, remember Krishna, chant Hare Krishna together. Remember, life is simple. There's no difficulty if you do remember Krishna. Let's take a few reflections and questions. And we'll pass the mic around. You'll get it within 7 seconds or less to give your reflection or ask a question, or we'll give your money back from your Sadhu Sanga. Plus, all expenses paid vacation to any temple you want to go to. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Vaisesika Prabhu. Such a treat.
Thank you, Shastrakrit Prabhu, for being out. He goes out all the time and just meets people warm-heartedly and invites them to read Krishna literature. But then he brings them back to his own house. He and his wife and little daughter, who's little Acharya in her own right. And they bring them in and they create a family environment so that people can feel the sense of community in Krishna consciousness. My apologies. Please go ahead.
when you were talking about the gold rush, I saw this little clip where back in the day, one guy offered to do the laundry for all the miners for free. And everybody gave him his laundry, but they couldn't understand why you want to do a laundry for free. But he was collecting all the gold filings from the miners, and he became a millionaire. So I was thinking, devotees like you, generals, mining the Gauranga mine, and just by doing your laundry, we can be benefited. We don't have to be somebody so great, but just assisting the leaders, then we will be extremely blessed.
Thank you. It's a very available metaphor to be extended. The idea of taking something small. One of the encouraging points Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita is this is cumulative. Everything you do counts, and you never lose it. And once, when I was in Bombay with His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj, we went to the house of one of his disciples named Narottam, and then we drove somewhere, and I sat in the back of the car with Narottam Prabhu, and he told me the story of how he became a wealthy person. He started his business by collecting cell phones that were thrown away. And within every cell phone, there's a tiny little fleck of gold. Did you know that? And he started an assembly line, and he would take out the little flecks of gold, and then it accumulated gradually into huge, massive gold, which was his startup capital for all the other industrious activities that he does. And in a similar way, every time we're able, even 2 minutes, to talk about Krishna, to be together, to remember him, it's like that gold that you're talking about that may come in the form of dust, but it adds up. And and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also compared to a capitalist. And we're also following in his footsteps. So we want to have that sense of accumulation, but not materially, obviously, spiritually. Okay, let's see if there's a couple more. Yes.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Guru
Krishna.
Maharaj, thank you for such a wonderful class. I really loved your play of words when you were saying remind. So in association of devotees, Krishna comes back into our mind, we are reminded. And the verse also talks about remembering Krishna in association of devotees. I was thinking nowadays there is this concept of mindfulness. And the real application of that is to fill your mind with Krishna. And in association of devotees, when they constantly remind you, your mind can be completely full of Krishna all the time. And that's the real concept of mindfulness, instead of just making your own efforts of practicing mindfulness.
It is, literally. In the verse I quoted earlier, although I didn't finish it completely, it says, Yat pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhakta karmashayam grataya santa. Sorry, I blew it. Yat pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhakta karmashayam gratitam ugratayanti santa tadvanda rikta matayo pirudha. The verse says the devotees' minds are always full of Krishna. But rikta matayo means somebody whose mind is empty. They don't have Krishna, that's what it means. They can't think of him because they have some hard-heartedness, or they haven't yet, as innocent souls, been given the opportunity to see Krishna and so forth. And because they're rikta matayo, they get washed away by the flood of material desires. You could see the parallel here. The devotees of the Lord who are mindful, and they remind each other of Krishna, they're washed away by the flood of Krishna's mercy. But those who are rikta matayo, they're empty-headed, literally empty-headed, rikta matayo, then they're helpless in the face of the onslaught of material nature. Yes. Are you? Yes.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you for the class. I was wondering, so you were talking about the importance of Sadhu Sanga, what should be our attitude when our Sadhu Sanga turns materialistic? Like if one of us is not as inclined toward Krishna consciousness, how do we bring the whole Sadhu Sanga back on track?
Very carefully, meticulously. If you have a Sangha somewhere, you have to be vigilant. In fact, Thomas Jefferson, one of America's statesmen or statespersons, said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And in our own lives, we have to be vigilant to make sure that we keep the vibration pure. And if we hold Sangha, our one duty is to make sure that it doesn't get diverted. And my wife and I, we live in a house in Burlingame, California, I'm proud to say, because we're near the temple. And we moved there because it's next to the airport. And it's a long story. But we had a Sangha at our house, which is a small house. The reason that the work we had to do was to make sure nobody came there with an agenda to change the vibration. We had to serve the group by making sure that if somebody came into the space that was diverting from the purpose, in other words, they had an ulterior motive, that we would expunge them from the invitation list. And it was by invitation only. This is a good point. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did the same thing at Sri Vasangam. Sangha means like-minded. You have to have friendships, and you have to have a sense of having a similar goal. And so Mahaprabhu was demonstrative about this at Sri Vasangam, because every night they would hold kirtan and dance. And Srivas Thakur once brought in, a couple times he brought in people from the outside. Once it was his mother-in-law, and she hid in the room, and Mahaprabhu started dancing, and he stopped the kirtan. He said, "I can't get the same Ananda. Somebody's here." And then they found her hiding, and he said, "Out." And then another time, he invited a brahmachari because he was very austere, and he only drank milk. And Mahaprabhu again, he noticed it. He said, just because somebody's austere doesn't mean they're in the right mood. So there is a way we have to be careful to keep everything in proper resonance with the interest of the community. And once we do that, then everything else naturally happens. Om Tat Sat. That's it. Is there one more question? We have 30 seconds.
Okay,
Yes, Prabhu.
Advanced Vaishnav. My question is, being part of this Sadhu Sangha, keeping a note of the self-interest as well as keeping a note of Sadhu Sangha interest. The burden of material desire, of always trying to stay in the limelight, it's always obstructing myself to be completely part of a Sangha. And how to really overcome this tendency of trying to stay in the limelight, or which is detrimental to the Sadhu Sangha. As you said earlier, that there are two impossible things in this material world: happiness and cooperation, that can be found only in Krishna conscious movement. And please elaborate on this question, dear Guru Maharaj.
Ask how may I be of service, and take some menial service. When we have service, we feel naturally satisfied. My tendency is, in material consciousness, to think, why aren't people serving me enough? And that's why I'm dissatisfied. Let's make a list. My such and such isn't serving me enough. Suggestions. Wife, husband, start there. Let's start at home. The kids aren't serving me enough. Who else? Huh? my contractor, whatever it may be. You can make a long list. And you say, they're not serving me enough. You'll be in endless anxiety because no one will ever serve you enough. And we'll never be able to serve them enough, either on the materialistic level. But for ourselves, when we say, how can I be of service? And we go into service mind rather than the false ego, as why aren't people serving me enough? Then there's a sense of relief, natural relief. It's a very simple switch from being the center or trying to find a place that's comfortable for me and being a servant. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Kalachandji, if you so desire, please bless us in this Sadhu Sanga, that we may remind others of Krishna, we may remind ourselves of Krishna, and we may stay in the mood of service amongst the devotees. And may we create a flood from this Sadhu Sanga in our own hearts that we may take out and share with the UPS driver, with the person at the reception desk, with whomever we meet. Thank you very much for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarishya kripasindhavevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari.